as some of you may know, may even not know, but Donald Trump signed an executive order the other day to attempt to end birthright citizenship. And of course, it's going to bring on a lot of legal challenges. Um, for the past 160-ish years, there's been Supreme Court precedent on this. Um, Obviously, for the past 165 years, also, people have been granted citizenship once they step foot on this soil and give birth. So, the House just introduced a bill. Of course, it hasn't been voted on, hasn't passed the House, hasn't even gone to the Senate, hasn't been signed into law, but it is to kind of strengthen Donald Trump's executive order to kind of give him a little bit more legality and some more of a fighting chance as these lawsuits mount. So I kind of wanted to go over that bill, but one of the interesting topics that's really not discussed is birthright tourism. So I'm gonna let about 8 or so minutes play out. Then we're gonna play this other video and kind of talk about both of these things. So here we go.
Today, we come together to address a matter of great significance: the integrity of American citizenship. President Trump has made it clear that restoring fairness to our immigration system and defending the true intent of the 14th Amendment are central to his vision of making America great again. His historic executive order to end birthright citizenship marks a critical step forward. And now, with the Birthright Citizenship Act of 2025, we can solidify these reforms into lasting law and codify them. This bill is quite simple. Let me share with you the criteria for automatic citizenship. Citizenship will be granted only to children born in the United States with at least one parent who is, one, a U.S. citizen or national; number two, a lawful permanent
He says lawful permanent resident.
a lawful resident who is serving in the military. This is about ensuring the citizenship, a cornerstone of our national identity. It is protected, respected, and aligned with the principles upon which this country was built. This is the time, ladies and gentlemen, to pass this legislation, which has been plaguing our country for well over 100 years. This opportunity will not come again, at least not for a long, long time. So please strongly urge your members of Congress to co-sponsor and vote for this important bill. I look forward to sharing more about this legislation and engaging in a meaningful conversation about its importance. And so with that, I'd like to pass the microphone over to another member of Congress who has been a consistent advocate for enforcing our immigration laws, my fellow co-chairman of the House Border Security Caucus, Representative Andy Biggs. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all of you for being here and my colleagues for being behind me. I'm grateful to be a co-sponsor of this legislation. It's an important piece of legislation, and it's going to codify the executive order that President Trump just put in. But I'll tell you this, if the framers of the 14th Amendment would have known how abused the notion of birthright citizenship would be, which was not even a notion in the 1860s, they would have been absolutely stunned. The people who support birthright citizenship turn often to the Wong Kim Ark case, but they forget what that case really stands about. What it stands for is permanent legal resident. So when you have the permanent legal resident, then the court said, then in that case, you might be a U.S. citizen if you were born in this country. That is what the Wong Kim Ark case stands for. People who are abusing this now, they're here temporarily, and they're here illegally. They should not be granted the special gift of citizenship in the United States of America when you've abused our laws. If you want more information on it, it's not hard. Go read the congressional record of the debate of the 14th Amendment. There you'll find that information. The notion of subject to the jurisdiction thereof, that language has been abused and bastardized. The courts that do not support birthright citizenship, it needs to come to an end. Many of us have advocated for that for some time, and I'm grateful for this piece of legislation. The last point of view I will give to you is the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act that was passed by Congress. Well, why is that important? Because until that time, only specific tribes were given individual birthright citizenship. But the reason that they did that is because they did not believe that nations, Indian nations, were subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They changed that in 1924. They did it legislatively. We need to clarify and codify that there is no birthright citizenship for those who enter this country illegally. And I'll just close out by saying there are some scholars that believe that even allowing birthright citizenship to permanent legal residents exceeds the original intention of the 14th Amendment. But our bill is going to clarify that, and I'm grateful to Mr. Babin, my co-chairman, Mr. Babin, for his effort and all those behind me. With that, I will throw this to the gentleman who is dressed so nattily today from South Carolina, Mr. Ralph Norman.
So, two things. One, as part of the treaties that were signed with the native indigenous tribes, um, a lot of them at that time wanted their own sovereignty. They wanted to police themselves. They wanted to govern themselves. So they were not subject to the rules and regulations of the United States. So that's why they did not accept U.S. citizenship until it was kind of legislated in the 1920s. And of course, nowadays, there's a lot of, there's a lot of natives that want to leave the reservation. They want to leave their sovereign territory. And some of them do want to go back into the sovereign territory. Of course, there's like a lot of trading and just a lot of business that needs to be done and various things. So that allows them to also be United States citizen. And so even if they do decide to leave, that they're still protected and have the ability to vote. But to kind of push back a little bit, I know what he said with the scholars, that the children of U.S. legal permanent residents should not be granted citizenship. I kind of push back on that, and the only reason why is because a lot of the immigration courts right now are so heavily uh, pushed to the max that there's literally some people even saying that it's literally like 100-year waiting list because they have a lot of asylum seekers, a lot of people who did cross the border and who are going illegally, who are using the due process to kind of fight their way through the courts. Um, so those who are that who have done the legal process and they are legal residents, permanent residents, um, they can wait up to 10, 15, 20, 30 years before they can actually go through the process. Obviously, there's tests, there's fees. Um, Last time I checked, of course, I could be a lot more now, but it was like $600. Plus, you have to take a test. Um, for a lot of American history, a lot of governmental process, how government works, and American ideology and stuff like that. And of course, you have to also be pretty proficient in the English language. On a side note, um, a lot of them know more about the American ideals, the American process, especially how government works, than most American citizens. Um, I was not surprised, but I'm actually just flabbergasted how many people during this past election didn't understand how government works. Um, as you may know, I am on a personal level, well, I consider myself pro life. I haven't been in a position um, to want to terminate a baby, so I'm going to say, as of I'm pretty much pro-life. But on a social, as you know, I'm a social libertarian, so I don't think that we should try to control women. Women are gonna do whatever they want to, and of course, Christians gonna say, well, it's a sin, and I'm gonna sit here and say, well, we're not here to police the world. We're only allowed to police the church or the body of Christ, but neither here or there. Um, so I am pretty much like a social libertarian. They can do whatever they want. But when you kind of saw how a lot of people kind of made the argument, oh, well, if we get Kamala Harris in, she's going to protect women's rights and their choice to autonomy. I don't really like to use the whole reproductive rights because you're not really reproducing with a decision like that. But neither here nor there. Um, and my argument to them was always, well, Kamala Harris by herself would not have been able to just willy nilly ensure those rights. Of course, the Supreme Court back in 2022 gave that option back to the states. It was a right that was granted by the Supreme Court in 1972 with Roe v. Wade, as people may not understand. So when it was overturned, it gave those decisions back to the states. So in order for Kamala Harris to consider that legal, she would have to have had um, a supermajority at the very least to at least be able to codify Roe v. Wade or an abortion law. And of course, that could also be challenged and easily be, well, I'm not going to say easily, but it could have been struck down by the Supreme Court. So then she would have to have a constitutional amendment, and then you'd have to have 2/3 in the House and in the Senate. So you'd probably have to have this super, super, super majority of Democrats. So it was kind of disingenuous for Kamala Harris not to really say that until the latter days of the campaign. So just kind of show you, as an example, how much people don't really understand how government works. There's three branches of government, and so that was just a side note that a lot of Americans, you know, are a little bit more ignorant and unknowledgeable about that kind of thing versus the people who actually have to become naturalized and take these tests. Um, but yeah, these children though, um, for them to not be U.S. citizens, is kind of absurd for the simple reason, legal permanent resident is pretty much granted all the rights except for pretty much like their ability to vote. That's usually where they kind of draw the line. Um, and it becomes almost difficult for them to be deported. The only way for them to be deported is for them to commit like a super heinous crime. So if they're having to wait 10, 20, 30 years to become citizens, and they do have kids, and those kids are 15, 20, 25, 30 years old, whatever, and though they're not pretty much grafted into citizenship, then where do they actually go? You have countries like Cuba and Japan where they have pretty strict immigration rules. Pretty much it's almost nearly impossible to become a citizen of those countries, especially if you have been born outside of those countries. Um, so it's just one of those things that I don't think that children should be punished just because the immigration courts are slam packed with a whole bunch of other cases before those who are trying the legal process are prioritized.
Thank you, Andy. I want to thank Congressman Babin for sponsoring this legislation and all of my colleagues behind me who are supporting this. As Andy said, the founders did not have a notion to think that this would be an issue at any time, nor did they have a notion that they would have a president who would let anybody and everybody from over 175 countries in this country illegally to cross the border. We're a nation of laws. We're a sovereign nation. But you have to have sovereign borders, and who would have thought that would have been violated? The Citizenship Clause was never intended to guarantee citizenship for the children of illegal immigrants. And let me give you some statistics. The CIS, the Center for Immigration Studies, estimate that 1 out of 10 births in the United States are to an illegal mother. CIS also estimates that nearly 400,000 expectant mothers cross the border illegally in hopes of giving birth in the United States. After being granted automatic citizenship, these children can initiate chain migration with their family members. This is an exploitation of the 14th Amendment, never intended by the founders. This is the executive order that President Trump signed right after he was inaugurated this past week. And, I think that when you look at what this country was built on, what this country has become when the Biden administration took office is an abomination to our freedom. It's an abomination to the other citizens, the ones who came here legally. They didn't come here illegally. They came here legally, which is what the Constitution was intended. So with that, I would turn the mic over to Representative Morgan Luttrell. Morgan.
I'll yield. You guys have said everything I was going to say.
Okay. Then Brandon Gill.
We got Dana.
Who?
Dana.
Oh, Diana?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, let me say one thing.
Diana Harshbarger.
Yeah.
Pharmacist from Tennessee.
As the only biological female who could birth up here, just so you fellas know, this is a big-time industry with birthright citizenship. People will come from many, many countries to give birth, and they pay a lot of money to get here. So this bill would negate that, and so therefore would stop that stream. People come for nefarious reasons, but like I say, there's other people making money off of this, so just be aware of that. So now we'll turn it over to Mr. Gill from Texas.
All right, so I wanted to pause it there and kind of go over to this video over here. It kind of came out 5 years ago. It kind of talks about this birthright citizenship tourism where people are kind of flying in from various places, usually like China, Middle East, and they're literally just kind of exploiting the system. So definitely wanted to take a look at it.
Foreign women come to America pregnant and their babies go home as U.S. citizens. This ultimate accessory is brought to you by the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that allows, if you are born in the United States, you are a U.S. citizen. And authorities tell the I-Team tonight some women are lying to federal authorities and paying big money to make it happen.
Most of the patients I've taken care of are from Middle Eastern countries.
Dr. Mia Norlin is an OB/GYN in Chicago. She says some of her patients have traveled here from other countries and paid out of pocket to deliver their babies in the United States.
We looked into it to make sure that it was legal. It's different than most of our patients.
According to this just released federal government report, the U.S. birth rate is at a 32-year low. But according to the Center for Immigration Studies, an organization that favors restricting immigration, there is a birth rate here that is on the rise. The number of babies delivered via birth tourism.
Birth tourism is the practice of people from other countries coming to the United States specifically for the purpose of having a child here, knowing that that child will be considered a U.S. citizen.
The U.S. is one of only 35 countries in the world that recognizes birthright citizenship.
The whole concept of birth tourism and the outcry against it raises some pretty basic questions about our Constitution.
ABC 7 legal analyst Gil Sofer notes that there's no official agency tracking tourism births. Annual estimates range from 35,000 to hundreds of thousands.
We know that there are tens of thousands of people who list a foreign address on their child's birth certificate.
Foreign websites advertise packages costing up to $150,000 that include medical costs, high-end accommodations, and help with paperwork to obtain U.S. passports for the newborns. Companies touting American citizenship will provide easier access to U.S. universities, and that American-born children can sponsor their parents' immigration to the United States once they turn 21.
I actually think it's about time that somebody tested these theories, and that we found a real case that could go to the Supreme Court and be decided once and for all who is entitled to U.S. citizenship.
Just before the midterm elections, President Donald Trump said he wanted to issue an executive order ending birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to unauthorized immigrant parents, but made no mention of birth tourism babies.
I think that the lack of attention to this, at least on a political level, is intentional.
Sonia Kanzader is an attorney with the O'Neill Institute at Georgetown University. She is a U.S. citizen based on being born here to undocumented immigrant parents.
There's this burgeoning industry of people coming in to get citizenship for their children kind of more as accessories. They're not staying in the country. They're using it just more as kind of just a status symbol.
Federal raids in Southern California and a several-year investigation led to these birth tourism business owners being charged in January with fraud for instructing women to lie on visa applications and hide their pregnancies from airport customs agents.
It does feed into these larger organizations that are coaching these people to lie, that are absolutely gaming the system.
There is no data on how prevalent birth tourism is here. All of the major hospitals in Metro Chicago either denied or ignored I-Team requests for interviews. Dr. Mia Norland tells us she is surprised how many women from overseas blindly trust the U.S. medical system.
It's interesting and kind of worrisome to me that people, probably come here assuming that they're going to get the best medical care.
The Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ignored our repeated requests for interviews regarding birth tourism. Obviously a sensitive subject.
Obviously.
Yeah. Hey, if you like that.
All right, so I definitely wanted to just kind of give a little bit of my own perspective. So I kind of stand in the middle of immigration. On certain areas, I'm pretty soft, and then on other areas, I'm very much a hardliner. We definitely have to have border security. We definitely have to have border protection. I think that we're just so adamant on focusing on just the southern border, but we don't really focus on, our border with Canada. Obviously, some of the others are people just flying in here on tourist visas, student visas, whatever, and kind of just overstaying those visas and never really leaving. So it is a complex situation, and obviously with the birthright tourism, um, obviously I'm not really like a big fan of the H1 and the H2B visas. I think that they are being used to suppress American wages. Obviously, well, let me reload this if it can. But obviously, Elon Musk and Tesla, they fired, I want to say about 15,000 um 15,000 jobs last April, and then they literally wanted to increase the H1B visas. So, when you kind of look at it, you have somebody who's an American citizen, they can make anywhere between like 150 to 300,000. Um, that normally would help not just them, but the American economy overall. So let me explain. So let's just hypothetically say he or she makes 200,000. It allows for them to have their spouse stay at home. They now have money for daycare. So people who work at the daycare, they're making money. Um, they literally bought a house. So the construction workers who made money. The mortgage broker made money, the realtor made money, the appraiser made money, the inspector made money. Let's say that, they refinance their house and do some additions, or, do a little bit of remodeling. So now the remodelers, the contractors, the permitters, all these people are now making money. Let's say they have about a $70,000 vehicle. So now, not only GM or, Mopar or Dodge or whatever, Honda, whatever, they're making money. But then you have the sales rep who is also making money, and the mortgage writer, the underwriter, and all, not mortgage writer, but the underwriter, and all these other people are not making money. So let's say that they go buy some groceries. Now the grocery store is making money, the employee is making money, the farmer's now making money. Then let's trickle it down to, let's say they go out to eat. That restaurant is making money. The people that they purchase the food, the farmer, now the waitress is making money. And then let's say they go on a local vacation or they just drive down to the beach. Airbnb's making money. Let's say they fly in, the airport, the pilot, uh, um, the, the steward is making money. Um, then then let's say they go down to the beach or they fly from Florida to Chicago, whatever, the Airbnb, the hotel, and it's just a trickle down effect. So when you actually look at what's kind of going on with the H-1B visas, a lot of them they're getting paid $50,000, $80,000. So it doesn't allow for that same kind of economic flourishment for everybody else. I mean, if anybody who makes $50,000 at a certain point in time, that was good money. Now, it's the struggle train, it's a struggle bus. So, and then they're not really getting benefits. They're not getting this paid time off. A lot of times, they're not getting 401k. Um, uh, there's just a lot of benefits that they're not getting. So if they happen to get fired or can't find another job, then of course, then they're deported. They're sent back to the country of origin. So when you think of all of this, it is a huge issue. Um, I have a buddy. Um, he's a carpenter. He makes about 120,000, especially with like the whole new construction and everything. Well, at any given time, somebody can replace him and be paid, $40,000, $50,000 in a year to do the same kind of work. And so one is definitely a citizen and the other one isn't. So it's just kind of like this big issue with that. So I kind of come from more of a populist wage perspective, not necessarily like I don't want people in the country. I normally wouldn't care, but the only reason why I do kind of care is because let's take a look at just some numbers that came out today. um let's see. Today, jobless claims are at 220,000 versus the 221 thousand that was estimated. So we have 2,000 more people on unemployment. Well, unemployed, not on unemployment, unemployed. Um, Previously is 270,000, so now we have about 6,000 people more unemployed. As of right now, the continuing jobless claims is at 1.89 million versus the 1.86 million. So, there's about 2 or 3 million, not million, but 2 or 3, 20 to 30,000 more than expected. Um, and then previously it was 1.85 million. So obviously the numbers are going up. Let me see. The numbers could obviously be cooked, but I'm just going to give you the statistics from the labor. So you got 4.1. That's what they consider the unemployment rate in its entirety. 6.9 million people unemployed. Obviously, that number is kind of false. And then 2.6 million are on an unemployment insurance. So one of the things that kind of happened after COVID was there was a lot of hiring being done. People were kind of doing this silent quitting. They were leaving their job, going to go get better positions, asking for raises, getting more money, stuff like that. And so one of the things that the Federal Reserve noticed was, well, we can stop a lot of inflation by jacking up interest rates, which, um, affect businesses. And so, i.e., a lot of people started getting laid off in 2022. A lot of people started getting severances packages um, from a lot of these tech companies in 2023. A lot of more people started getting laid off. 2024, a lot more businesses started getting laid off. So if there's millions, let's just say there's hypothetically a million or so people in the tech industry looking for jobs, and they've all been laid off at different companies. It'd be one thing if one company just laid somebody off, it'd be a lot easier to get a job. But when you have a million of other American citizens fighting for those same positions, it tightens up the labor market. And then when you have these companies willing to bring in H-1B visa recipients for less wages, then that even becomes even harder for them to have a job. So people don't necessarily think about it that way. Um, so yeah, it is it's a big clusterfuck. And of course, I do kind of think that people who are in the DACA program and possibly in the DAPA program, they probably should be granted citizenship. Um, just because they're essentially American, without the ability to vote. Most of them, they're very fluent in English. They went to public schools. Um, then they've kind of found a career, or they started a business, or there's a lot of net benefits. And then of course you can make the argument that some people who've been here 20, 30 years illegally that are not part of the DAPA program. So to an extent,
I think we gotta have tough.
to an extent, I really am not a big fan of Hillary Clinton. I don't like her. I think she's, a trash person. But this right here is kind of in certain ways where I do kind of stand, especially for not necessarily DACA, but more of the DAPA, um, for those parents. So this is where I kind of stand on that.
So I think we gotta have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes, and you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
So obviously, for some, who've definitely been here 20, 30 years, I mean, it would cause like a clusterfuck. Um, and of course, even though you're not a citizen, you are entitled to due process. So it does become a huge issue. It can, really fuck up the courts. And those who are actually here attempting to become legal citizens, they're gonna have to wait in even longer line. So they're technically being punished, because the courts are so congested with applications for asylum seekers and those who just kind of came here illegally. So it is definitely an issue that we definitely have to. It's definitely an issue that we have to like take a look at, um, on a case by case basis. We do have to have some kind of balancing act. We cannot have more people here than what the jobs and infrastructure allows. Um, and so with that kind of being said, this is one of the things that I kind of wanted to like look at. Obviously there was this claim that Tyson Foods fired 1,200 American workers so they could hire 42,000 illegal immigrants. But that is not necessarily true in its entirety, but it's just equally as bad once you figure out what's being said. So the Bloomberg article quoted Garrett Dolan, Associate Director of Human Services for Tyson Foods, who said that the company would like to hire another 42,000 immigrants if they could find them. Dolan also quoted as saying that the company expects to lose 40% of the 100,000 employees each year due to high turnover rate in these roles, and plans to hire another 52,000 people in total 2024. So I mean, there's a good, laundry list of reasons why there could be a high turnover rate, but most of it can be summed up into low pay. The pay doesn't necessarily match the job, so a lot of Americans will be willing to leave and go find a better job. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why they want these migrants, because they would be less likely to leave. And then they can obviously accept lower pay. And then two, it's just shitty ass management. Like um, that's usually one of the two reasons why a company would have a high turnover rate. And obviously, you can see the situation that happened with Disney a few years ago. American citizens were literally expected to train their replacement, which happened to be um, somebody from another country in a lot of those cases. So, we definitely have to make sure that wages are paid, benefits, and there has to be a benefit to work. I mean, who the fuck really wants to work 60, 70 hours a week, work two or three jobs just to make it? Like that, nobody really wants to do that, especially for not the entirety of their whole life. Um, I'm not really big with the oligarchic big business argument of you're just not working hard enough. A lot of people really are. They're working two or three jobs. They're doing a lot to really make it. But at the same time, yeah. So if y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, just let me know. If you have any disagreements, tell me what they are. I will gladly, possibly even debate you depending on what the disagreement is. But like I usually say, y'all be good, y'all be safe, peace.